Essentially, of course, what he's showing in this chapter is that Black capitalism had emerged out of a certain economic, social, and political context. It has adhered because of a particular social, political, economic context, and it is, in fact, mythological. And more specifically, it is harmful. It's impossible, therefore, as he says, to talk about underdevelopment as purely economic as a purely economic process because the human content of the dynamic is profoundly social, cultural, and political. A decisive component of this underdevelopment process within the periphery is the non-white elite. The elite was a product of capitalism, colonialism, and imperialism. Its activities reinforce the process of Western capital accumulation and the underdevelopment of the African masses. So whether we're talking about the continent, the diaspora, here in the United States, this elite, this Black bourgeoisie, is a product of capitalism, colonialism, and imperialism, and that's always a good place to start. Of the many contradictions created by this reality is the fact, as Marable points out, that relative certainly to the rest of the Black population, segregation, an absence of radical movements and politics and the myths that have evolved around them all benefited the Black elite, and all to a certain extent. And one of the reasons why we hear a lot of the argument around buying power, Black capitalism, etc., and this idea, even as is being discussed with sinners, although this is not the prediction I said is we're going to see in a moment, is that ownership is freedom. All of this emerges in a certain context that Marable summarizes in this chapter, I think, very well. The Black business person is the linchpin of underdevelopment and capital accumulation within the Black community.
Message.
And I think it's important the way he wrote this. The Black business person is the linchpin of both underdevelopment and capital accumulation. Because remember, as this book is itself a subset, as Marable says himself, of Rodney's underdevelopment of how Europe underdeveloped capitalist, how Europe underdeveloped Africa.
The fuck is he talking about?
Capital accumulation accompanies underdevelopment. So even that sentence alone explodes so much of the mythology around this idea that Black business is something good for the collective. The goal of the Black entrepreneur is to make profits, period. How he or she accomplishes this task is secondary to the goal. The non-white business person is the personification of the legitimizing and rational character of capitalism. Black entrepreneurialism is the personification of the legitimizing and rational character of capitalism. Or as William F. Buckley says, scattered success breeds universal hope. For white corporations, the Black entrepreneur, he or she, serves to perpetuate the illusion that anyone can make it within the existing socioeconomic order if only he or she works sufficiently at it. For the state, the Black entrepreneur represents the role model of proper civic behavior that the unruly and unproductive Black masses should follow. And again, that is.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
And that's the contradiction that we get stuck on. It's in some ways, and I do mean to be hyperbolic here, a parallel of what we were talking about earlier on Saturdays with Renee over on Black Liberation Media with Jared Ware of Millennials Are Killing Capitalism, fire show. It's a parallel of that discussion of that contradiction that cannot be resolved by Harvard reports, 600 pages of Harvard reports, that for the Zionist, Israel is salvation, and for the Palestinian, it is genocide. That contradiction, it is what John Oliver Killen said of the United States. For the ever-present contradiction is that for the white settler, the United States was their salvation. For the African, it was slavery. So the way to try to correct that for the state is to say, we know that contradiction is going to continue because, as again, Harold Laswell taught in terms of propaganda, the conditions aren't going to change, only the attitude people have about those conditions. So to change the attitude, you have to evolve a Black entrepreneur and an entrepreneurial narrative that is used by the state to say this is the kind of struggle we want. And for capitalism, it becomes the anyone can make it. It becomes you're not mad at the billionaire, you're not mad at the corporate monopolization of our society. You are envious, you are desirous and feel like we can get there. All we have to do is get our financial literacy together. Profits can be made by extorting Black consumers via Black nationalist appeals to buy Black, something Marable elaborates upon, obviously, in this chapter. But for the Black elite, hey, nah, we're for the people. We're for the people, buy Black. But it seems appropriate writing this monograph during the period of Reaganomics to begin with the historical evolution of the entrepreneur and the theory of Black capitalism. And again, Reagan, who, of course, died during my wedding, left us with this Reaganomics. So, of course, this chapter's, you know, mid to late 80s. But Reagan was doing a lot of the same things, supporting Black business, small business. He was an extension of the Nixonian plan. For these leaders and the majority of Black political organizations of the last 100 years, Black capitalism connotes several key concepts: the accumulation of capital by individual Black entrepreneurs, strategies designed to maintain Black control over the Black consumer market in the U.S., collective programs to improve the economic condition of all Blacks within the overall framework of the U.S. capitalism. Beneath all of this is a theory of development rooted in the often unchallenged assumption that U.S. capitalism is not structurally racist and that the devastated condition of most Blacks throughout history could be alleviated through the acceleration of capital accumulation in the hands of a small number of Blacks. And we're relatively still getting the same thing. And as I was pointing out earlier, they're even happy to help sponsor museums for the poors and the regulars to go get inspired. Black capitalism was a social myth, according to E. Franklin Frazier, perpetuated by individual Black entrepreneurial success stories and by the economic barriers established by the system of segregation. The contemporary renaissance of the Black capitalist programs and ideology, fostered partially by the Reagan administration, again, my wedding, and the emergence of a political conservative sector of the Black elite. The origins of Black capitalism are found in the development of a small but affluent propertied Black elite, which emerged before the Civil War. And he details some of this history. That is, it oddly all comes back to service to whites, because before the Civil War, Black entrepreneurs all were working for white people who were happy to have Black people do these little bits of jobs for them. After the Civil War, the Black entrepreneurial class freed, relatively speaking, from the bonds of their white consumer base, who went on to support white businesses doing those things, turned to their own constituents. So that's where you get the Black bourgeois or business class targeting Black consumers, but all still requiring, if there was going to be evolution or of that business, white investment. So you either stay small and Black exclusive, or if you want to grow in terms of particularly today, but certainly whenever, if you wanted to grow beyond a certain point, you either needed white public policy support, the legality of it, or the social structure that would not come and destroy it, or you would need white investment, white capital, white. So either way, it's all born out of the context. So as he points out here, that is Marable. This is largely the result of the reality that this is these are the only avenues for Black people to make any money. White racism is still the decisive factor. The older Black business elite, barbers, butlers, caterers, tailors, blacksmiths, carpenters, furniture makers, and other skilled artisans, had been dependent upon white patrons for much of, if not all, its business. With the expansion of racial segregation after 1890, many of these artisans disappeared. The new generation of Black entrepreneurs was a byproduct of racial segregation, developing goods and services for Black consumers, embracing Washington Booker T's rhetoric of self-help and racial upliftment. A conservative Black nationalist ideology was promoted aggressively by Black bankers, insurance agents, and small merchants, precisely because they depended upon the Negro community for their support, observed historian August Meyer. And again, it is exactly the language used today. An aggressive Black nationalist ideological rhetoric that says you have to buy black, bank black, circulate black, but only whether conscious or not, the end result is only a benefit to this handful, again, handful of a relatively comfortable black elite. But the ideology and practice of black capitalism was to become a national force. It required political organizations. So that's why you get the National Negro Business League from Booker T. Washington. That's why Du Bois initially supports it. He supports black business. He supports cooperatives initially. But then, as becomes central to my own argument, unfortunately, what ends up happening is that it's a lot of this ends up being supported by the black press. And this is where you start getting what by today is that incestuous relationship where the black press, which targets black consumers for subscribers, wants to promote itself and needs advertising. Where do they go for advertising? The black business community. The black business community needs the advertising to drum up business. And then in each case, there becomes the mutual benefit of, well, for each of them, they benefit mutually off of the promotion of buying power, of the potential of the black dollar, and both struggle as each is targeting an overwhelmingly black and poor audience. So ultimately, for all of them to survive, especially today, back to my initial point, you are back to the point of needing white investment for business and white advertising for the press. The black press collects white advertising dollars to promote white owned products. To a lesser extent, it will do that for black ownership, which is not much. The goal in each case is to promote, the businesses want to promote their products, but they also want to promote the as Marable points out, the ethic that this is the only proper civic approach to your condition. And the black press wants to promote buying power and black capitalism more broadly, as a way to attract that white corporate money. And it's just, and then the black masses are left just as poor or worsening, and that much less informed about how the economy works.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.